Monday, April 21. Abraham's Call. In the 10th chapter of Genesis, we see the birth of various nations. The word usually translated nations is goyim, which also can refer to Gentiles. Genesis 10 tells us that the human race divided up into lands, languages, families, and nations. See Genesis chapter 10 and verse 5. From these the coastland peoples of the Gentiles were separated into their lands, everyone according to his language, according to their families, into their nations. Revelation 14 verse 6. Then I saw another angel flying in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach to those who dwell on the earth, to every nation, tribe, tongue, and people. Almost immediately after the introduction of this concept, God calls Abraham out of one of those nations to be different from them and from what they represent. Read Genesis 12, verses 1 to 9. Now the Lord had said to Abraham, Get out of your country, from your family and from your father's house, to a land I will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great. And you shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse him who curses you. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. So Abraham departed as the Lord had spoken to him, and Lot went with him. And Abraham was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. Then Abram took Sarai his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their possessions that they had gathered, and the people whom they had acquired in Haran. And they departed to go to the land of Canaan. So they came to the land of Canaan. Abram passed through the land to the place of Shechem, as far as the terebinth tree of Moreh, and the Canaanites were then in the land. Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, To your descendants I will give this land. And there he built an altar to the Lord, who had appeared to him. And he moved from there to the mountain east of Bethel. And he pitched his tent with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. There he built an altar to the Lord, and called on the name of the Lord. So Abram journeyed, going on still toward the south. Why did God call Abram, later Abraham, out from his country of origin? God intended to use Abraham to establish a nation that would stand in contrast to human kingdoms. They were not to have a king other than God himself. The people were to show what would happen if the human race returned to their Creator. Israel was established to be a blessing to all the families of the earth. Genesis 12 and verse 3. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse him who curses you, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. God had poured out upon the Israelites light and privileges that had not been seen in the world since, perhaps, before the flood. Read Deuteronomy chapter 4, verses 5 to 9. Surely I have taught you statutes and judgments, just as the Lord my God commanded me, that you should act according to them in the land which you go to possess. Therefore be careful to observe them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the peoples who will hear all these statutes and say, Surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. For what great nation is there that has God so near to it, as the Lord our God is to us, for whatever reason we may call upon him? And what great nation is there that has such statutes and righteous judgments as are in all this law which I set before you this day? Only take heed to yourself, and diligently keep yourself, lest you forget the things your eyes have seen, and lest they depart from your heart all the days of your life, and teach them to your children and your grandchildren. What was the Lord telling the children of Abraham, the nation that had become a fulfillment of the promises God had made to Abraham? This was not a single individual bearing witness in a single community. This was an entire nation that, by working together and in cooperation with God, could exhibit the glory of his character. Notice too, in the words spoken to them, that it wasn't just statutes and judgments that God had given them that made them so special, but their adherence to them that would cause the other nations to say, "Surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people." Deuteronomy 4 verse 6. However wonderful the truths given to the people, their failure to live up to them, to obey them, would bring curses instead of blessing and death instead of life. How does the same principle, that of not just knowing these truths but obeying them, apply to us as Adventists today?
Monday, April 21. Abraham's Call. This hope of redemption through the advent of the Son of God as Savior and King has never become extinct in the hearts of men. From the beginning, there have been some whose faith has reached out beyond the shadows of the present to the realities of the future. Adam, Seth, Enoch, Methuselah, Noah, Shem, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Through these and other worthies, the Lord has preserved the precious revealings of his will. And it was thus that to the children of Israel, the chosen people through whom was to be given to the world the promised Messiah, God imparted a knowledge of the requirements of his law and of the salvation to be accomplished through the atoning sacrifice of his beloved Son. The hope of Israel was embodied in the promise made at the time of the call of Abraham and afterward repeated again and again to his posterity. "In thee shall all families of the earth be blessed." Genesis chapter 12, verse 3. As the purpose of God for the redemption of the race was unfolded to Abraham, the Son of Righteousness shone upon his heart, and his darkness was scattered. And when, at last, the Savior himself walked and talked among the sons of men, he bore witness to the Jews of the patriarchs' bright hope of deliverance through the coming of a Redeemer. "Your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day," Christ declared, "and he saw it and was glad." John chapter 8, verse 56. Prophets and Kings, pages 682 and 683. The message of God came to Abraham: "Get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house unto a land that I will show thee." In order that God might qualify him for his great work as the keeper of the sacred oracles, Abraham must be separated from the associations of his early life. The influence of kindred and friends would interfere with the training which the Lord purposed to give his servant. Now that Abraham was, in a special sense, connected with heaven, he must dwell among strangers. His character must be peculiar, differing from all the world. He could not even explain his course of action so as to be understood by his friends. Spiritual things are spiritually discerned, and his motives and actions were not comprehended by his idolatrous kindred. It was no light test that was thus brought upon Abraham, no small sacrifice that was required of him. There were strong ties to bind him to his country, his kindred, and his home, but he did not hesitate to obey the call. He had no question to ask concerning the land of promise, whether the soil was fertile and the climate healthful, whether the country afforded agreeable surroundings and would afford opportunities for amassing wealth. God has spoken, and his servant must obey. The happiest place on earth for him was the place where God would have him to be. Patriarchs and Prophets, page 126.
And remember, God is always faithful.